Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the hardest time that I've ever done in my life. For those of you that are not aware, I lost years of my life to jails and prison, starting from an early age. In addition, I spent time in homeless shelters, and from there on to juvenile detention centers. It was in one of those juvenile detention centers that I did the hardest time out of all. I've been to multiple county jails, multiple state prisons, and nothing compared to the time that I'm about to talk to you about. And thankfully, this place no longer exists. It was long ago demolished. But this place was basically a house of horrors. It was nothing like anything you could imagine. Okay? There was no oversight as far as anyone knowing what was going on inside the facility. There were no cameras. There were no protections for any of us in there. And there were also different laws back then, in the sense that as a juvenile, we weren't allowed to be in touch with anyone. We were only allowed one phone call per month for 10 minutes, and it was in the presence of a social worker. So even if something was happening to you in there, you never had the opportunity to tell anyone. You also weren't allowed to have visits outside of your immediate family, meaning parents or siblings only. And they had to be over 18 as well. So I wasn't getting visits in this place, and I wasn't really talking to anyone outside of letters. I was writing letters to only one person at that time, and she was my friend Gloria. I didn't tell her what happened. But it started out with me having a problem with some of these guards. Okay? These guards are just pieces of shit. A lot of them are just evil people. For example, they would make me strip search, over 10 times a day. Sometimes randomly, just walking down the hallway. Sometimes in front of other staff members that included females. And they were doing this just to humiliate me. They were trying to just get to me. I was held in a solitary confinement situation. Back then, we were all confined to our own cells. But worse than that, there was a period of 1 month where they used to have females in this building at one time. We would rarely ever see them, maybe once every couple months in passing, but they were on a separate floor. They then removed the females completely from the facility, and as punishment, they put me on the old female floor, which is now abandoned, for a month. And I'm in a cell by myself, and they just brought me, my food, and that was it. And one of the worst things that was happening to me then was, I was fighting with the guards. I would fight back, and I was real young. This is talking about a time when I'm like 13 years old. The guards would come in the cell, and they would beat the fuck out of me. They would pounce on me and stomp me and throw, haymakers at me, like serious. And they would do that a lot, like almost every day. And they do that to try to get me to cry or scream out, beg them to stop, which I didn't. I did the opposite. I became crazy in the sense that I realized that that's what they wanted, and I refused. And I became so strong in regard to mind over matter that I denied them that happiness, that pleasure that they sought in seeing me suffer. And I never ever did that. I never begged them to stop. I never cried. I did the opposite. I provoked them more. And I talked more shit to them as they're beating me. And they would leave me on the ground, crumbled up. There were times where it took me days before I could even get up out of the bed because my whole body had been broken up. They took me to a psychiatric unit from there, and I don't remember really what happened there, but I do remember being transported there, and then I remember being strapped down to this table that had arms, and I was strapped like this, and there were thick leather brown straps with metal buckles wrapped around my wrist and also around my ankles. That's the last I remember of that part. I was there for like maybe 4 days to a week, and they brought me back. One of the saddest things for me was that in this place, it was hard enough, being that young. I was one of the youngest ones there. Maybe 2 or 3 times somebody younger came in, but they were in and out. And there were like 18 and 19-year-olds in this place also. So it was not a safe environment. But again, it was the guards that I was having the problems with for the most part. But one of the saddest things was that the cell that I was held in didn't have a toilet or a sink. So no running water. So if I needed to use the bathroom at night, I'd have to bang on the door and call out for the staff, and they'd have to get up, walk down the cell block, and open my cell and escort me down to the bathroom and bring me back. I've always been the same as far as how my body is. My body just naturally expels fluids. So I would have to pee at night, and I actually hurt myself holding it in for so long until I couldn't anymore, and I realized these people stopped opening the door for me. They're not letting me out anymore at night. So I would lock in at 7 p.m. and be locked in until the following morning, like 8 a.m., something like that. And for that entire period of time, I didn't have water, or I didn't have a bathroom. And it's embarrassing for me to tell you guys this, but it's, it is what it is. This is the story. This is what happened. I ended up having to pee in my cell, in my little ass cage, like a dog. I had to pee in the corner. And when the cell doors opened in the morning, hope that the guards would allow me to go grab a mop bucket, from the cleaning room, and I just mop it out and go rinse out the mop a couple times and hit it again. But I had to do that every day. Every day. I would spend all that time in this fucking cage, and I'd have to use the bathroom in there, on the floor. And just imagine, the psychological damage that the combination of all these things did to me. The solitary confinement by itself will fuck you up. Humans are not meant to be solitary creatures. We're meant to socialize. We're meant to be around others. And when you take that away from someone, especially a young person, you mess them up permanently. It's sad for me, but thinking back, the friends that I had in there, none of them ended up okay. The closest one to me was a guy in a cell next to me. And I remember one day there was a janitor or maintenance worker on the floor, and he brought this cart with tools on it, and he left it unattended, and I saw it. And I saw a drill gun, a wireless battery-powered drill gun, and I went and grabbed it, and there was already a little chip in one of the cinder blocks between our cells, and I hit the drill gun, hit it through a couple times, and tried to make the hole as big as I could real quick while my friend looked out. And I ran and put the thing back, and then he and I would be able to talk through that hole. So I would tell him to come to the hole, and he would come, and I would talk to him through that. We would smoke cigarettes through there and share them, anytime we got tobacco. But that friend and I used to talk a lot, and we were in very similar situations about our age and about our lives prior to being there. He ended up committing suicide by cop, and he ended up with a machine gun in the middle of the road in the daytime, surrounded by cops, and he was crying, telling them to shoot me, shoot me, please, begging them to shoot me, and they wouldn't shoot him. They were just screaming at him to drop the gun, and this went on for some time, and then he just shot a couple rounds at a building, and that caused them to light him up. He was hit over 100 times and died on the spot. He was 16 when he died. Another one of my friends from there, a couple of years after, he was 18 or 19, he drove his car off a cliff, committed suicide. Another guy that was in there that was actually not a friend of mine, but somebody that was there, ended up in passing years later in adult prison. It's crazy, but he was being molested in this place, and I think that's what ended up causing what happened to him. He was now like a transsexual, he was a fag, dressed as a woman, wearing makeup and shit, in state prison, doing a life bid for murder, and that's how he ended up. Another one of my friends ended up dying in the hands of police officers in the jail cell, and another one ended up dying of a drug overdose. So these guys that were around me at that time in that place, they didn't make it. Nobody made it out that I'm aware of. No one ever succeeded. No one was able to really overcome those things that happened. The majority ended up, fucked for life and doing long prison bids, if not life sentences. So I'm very thankful that I was able to come out of that. And that's just one chapter of my life that was, really disturbing when I look back and realize what it was, and how bad it had affected me. And coming out of a situation like that, I came out after about a year, and I was fucked up. I had to become something I didn't want in order to survive psychologically. In order to not break, I had to become very different than anything I wanted to be, and I couldn't socialize. I didn't talk to anybody. This began a period of my life where I was just completely antisocial, and my life in the free world mimicked the same as it was in the jail cell. I would do the same things. I'd stay by myself. I'd do my workout, do my push-ups. I'd read, and I wouldn't talk to anyone for a long time. So, I did a lot of time in a lot of different places, a lot of bad places, places that people are afraid to go. But for me, having gone through, that and much more at such an early age, the adult prison system was nothing. You get a canteen. That's another thing. In juvenile, you can't order any canteen. There's nothing like that. We couldn't even have our shoes in the cell. We'd lock in with nothing. And the adult time was not like that for me. It was very different, and it wasn't easy. There's no easy time, no matter where you are. But compared to what I had gone through, it was nothing. It was nothing. So I just thought I'd share this with you guys. I happen to have been talking about it last night. with my family. And I normally don't talk about these kind of things, but the reason I was is because, I was sad, and my wife asked me, what was going on, and it was this, it was these thoughts and the memories of my friends and how they died, and the friends that I still have that'll never come home, doing life bids, and it's hard for me not to think these things. I try intentionally to never, but they just keep coming back to me, man. So long ago, this shit just keeps coming back, and I hope that one day it'll stop, but I know that it won't. It's just something that I have to deal with, and move on, and just do the best that I can. So I hope that this video helps any of you in any kind of way. If anything, just realize that if you're a parent to a young person, never, ever call the cops or involve them with the system, because there are horrors that will happen to them. And if you're a young person yourself, stay the fuck out of places like that, because you have no idea what kind of hell exists. People drive by these buildings all the time for years, never knowing that that's the devil's fucking playground in there. And there's some bad shit going on that you don't want to know about. And once you do know about, you'll never forget, and you'll wish you hadn't known. I'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks.